Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, YAA Electric's Plugged In podcast and YouTube show. How's everyone doing out there today? Hopefully you're doing wonderful. We've got a very, very special guest. It is Justice, our superhero auto expert from the YAA team. Hi, Justice. How are you doing?
Good. I'm doing good this morning. How about you?
Doing wonderful, doing wonderful. Getting excited for our discussion today, where we're going to talk all about the similarities and differences between the Tesla Model 3, which you have, and my brand new Hyundai IONIQ 5. So we're going to battle it out, see which one is best, and see if we can change anybody's minds. Now, to start out today's show, we're actually going to dig into some EV news because there's quite a bit of news out this morning. Some of it we're not even going to get to today, such as breaking news that one of the first production-ready solid-state batteries is actually available. Maybe we'll get to that if we have time. But we're going to kick it off with some trivia for our viewers and listeners out there. So I want everyone to put away Google and get your brain power going, because I want to know, what are the 3 states with the most EV registrations? Okay, we're gonna revisit that in a few minutes. The 3 states with the most EV registrations. Number 1's pretty easy, but I would be surprised and impressed if you guys can come up with number 2 and number 3. All right. So, Justice, I have a question for you. You
Yes,
live
sir.
in California, right?
I do.
So, driving around your local area, which I believe is the Sacramento area, if
Yep.
you were to take a 20-minute drive into town or around town, just estimate how many electric vehicles you might see.
Oh, in 20 minutes, I would easily see 100, 150.
Whoa, that's a lot more than I thought you would say. That is
Oh,
a
yeah,
lot.
no.
Now,
There's 15 parked out in front of on my street right now.
now, anecdotally, in that same drive, what do you think Tesla's market share would be on that little drive?
75%,
Well, that's just about
80%.
accurate. Yeah, Tesla
Yeah.
continues to have a 75% market share over EVs in the United States. Now, that's pretty amazing. So, some interesting data is out from the first quarter of 2022, and we now know that 27 out of 50 states had less than 2% EV market share in the first quarter. So that's 54% of the United States, less than 2%. Now, it just really goes to highlight that on the coasts, that's where most of the EV domination has been happening so far. California, New York, all along the East Coast, up through Washington, Oregon on the West Coast, because California is about 40% of plug-in sales. Now, here in West Virginia, where I'm at, I looked up the data. We have roughly 600 electric vehicles in the whole state. I guess 601 because I just bought a Hyundai IONIQ 5. In California, you guys have 425,000 registered EVs. That is orders of magnitude difference. Is that something that you see when you're driving around? Is that something that you appreciate as an EV driver in California? You live in the land of EVs, Justice.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I mean, I see it all the time. I mean, the Teslas alone, I have 3 Tesla shops within 20-minute drive of me here. I have not gone down the street in a long time without seeing multiple Teslas. Model 3 is the big dominator right now. You can't go anywhere without seeing one.
Do you
And
happen
I
to
do appreciate it.
do you happen to know what the population of California is, just roughly?
I
It's
have
like
no idea.
it's like 30 million. So let's see.
Yeah, yeah.
This is worth looking into because Jordan in the chat is bringing up the huge population difference between West Virginia and California. So let's see. California, 40 million people. West Virginia, just under 2 million people. So that
Yeah.
is a gigantic difference, but still 600 EVs in West Virginia. And I know we've got only 400 in the Dakotas. Wyoming, which has a very small population, only has like 200 registered EVs. Even though that is a big difference in population, still, when you account for that, we're looking at massive, massive differences in EV adoption across different regions of the United States. Now, I'm personally very curious as to how this is going to play out, because it's not like anyone who just wants an EV can go out and buy one. Supply shortages are something that are just ongoing, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better in 2022. So with some states and localities targeting, like, let's say 30% EV market share, or maybe even 50% EV market share at some point in the next few decades, is that even going to be feasible with market share? What do you think?
I mean, no, population is going to be a big one. They would have to really change infrastructure. I think the real reason California has such a market share is infrastructure. I can't go 5 minutes without being near a public charger.
That was the next thing I was going to ask you, Justice, in
Yeah.
this California versus the rest of America comparison. I was going to ask you, like, how many fast chargers are there within a 20-minute drive? Just any brand, just not just superchargers, but any brand.
Oh, there's so many. I mean, I would have no
Like
idea how to
10,
count, but
like 20?
oh no. So I can go to Target, which is 7 minutes from me up here. Every Target in Northern California has Tesla chargers. So I can go there. There's at least 5 at every one of them. There's all the other brands all over. I mean, no, I mean, I can count probably 30 within 5 minutes of me right now.
So the nearest DC fast charger to my home in southern West Virginia is a Tesla supercharger just 20 miles away. And if I go 30 miles away in a different direction, 30 miles in a different direction, I get my free charging at Electrify America. So, living in West Virginia, what makes sense for me is just charging at home. And that's what I do.
Yeah.
Just charge at home. Whenever it's time for a road trip, sure, I'll stop at Electrify America, a whole 40-minute drive away. But it's just amazing how EV adoption is not the same across America. You're seeing so many differences, and I can't help but wonder how many years or even decades it's going to take before this starts to even out. Will it ever even out? We'll see. We had a commenter. We had Freddie in the chat. Freddie has wondered what EV numbers look like in Texas. Well, Freddie, I think this is a good time to share the answer to today's trivia question with everyone. Justice, do you have any guesses for the top 3 states for the most EV registrations? Not by market share, but by EV registrations.
Well, my guess was obviously California.
That's number 1.
And then I would say Texas and then New York, if I was guessing.
Close. So number 2 is Texas. So, Freddie, you were onto something. Texas is the number 2 state by EV registrations. Number 3 is actually Florida.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then New York and New Jersey come in right after that. So it's just not a lot of people would suspect that the oil state of the southern United States, Texas, is actually the second highest EV registrations. But that's a big chunk of like population comparisons, but also just the fact that now that Tesla is headquartered in Austin, Texas, a lot more Texans are buying Teslas and EVs in general.
I will say I had a cheat on that in that I happen to know that Texas is number 2 for Tesla insurance.
Oh,
so they have very, very high use of Tesla insurance. So
interesting.
Put that together there. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into the Model 3 versus Hyundai experience, because you could buy your own insurance with your own Tesla insurance, and you've had an interesting experience with that. So we'll definitely talk about that in a few more minutes.
Yeah.
Don't want to get you riled up or anything, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. Now, a few more news items I want to get to. So Polestar 2 has been quite popular. We have Space in the chat, and Space has a Polestar of his own. The specs and pricing for 2023 are out. It's going to get a $2,000 to $3,000 price increase across the board. All-wheel drive is getting the higher increase, and all-wheel drive is also getting about 10 more miles of EPA-rated range. In addition to that price increase, we're looking at package options seeing increases as well. So the performance package is going up by about $500. Various other packages that you can select if you purchase a Polestar or lease a Polestar are going up in price. So This once again touches on why I personally think that if EVs are already near the upper limit of your price range, I would seriously consider getting one sooner rather than later, because prices aren't going down, and I don't see them going down in 2023. What about you, Justice? Do you think EV prices in general will go down at all in the next year to 2 years?
No. With material prices rising, and even Tesla is looking at manufacturing and digging their own ores and producing stuff, because they see all the prices increasing. So with raw material prices increasing, I don't see, and inflation, I don't think we'll ever see prices come down from here.
Now, we should share with the listeners and viewers that you interact with our YAA members daily over at joinyaa.com. Make sure you check out the community if you haven't already. Now, with your interactions with our customers and our members and just the general public, have you seen any improved negotiating power with purchasing or leasing an electric vehicle, or is it still basically you get what you get and you don't throw a fit?
Yep, yep. I have not seen any negotiations on an EV. In that, like Tesla, obviously there is no negotiation, and same with Polestar. They just are what they are because of the online sales thing. But where you have dealerships that are getting some of the EVs, like Hyundai, they get like one in a month.
Yeah.
So there is no negotiation. The best negotiation is, can you please not mark it up?
Yeah, and I've heard in a few instances that dealers are willing to maybe budge a little bit on the price for an EV if they have a trade-in to offer, and then they can use that as kind of collateral. But you'd be the expert on that, Justice. Is that something you
Yeah,
guys see just in the industry across the board, not just with EVs?
yeah. And across the board, definitely they'll work with you on the front end if they can lowball you on your trade and make that off the back end. Absolutely. I see a lot less of that though with the EVs. They're still digging their heels there, especially Hyundai and Kia. They like to dig in and just not move. So, oh, nice. Um,
Yeah, so I mean, I've spoken to the dealers here in West Virginia, and some of them are actually really enthusiastic about getting EVs into their inventory, but they're not getting any anytime soon. So, once again, we're going to see as supply eventually catches up, will EV adoption become more homogenous across the nation, or will it continue to thrive on the coasts but not in the rest of America? We'll see. Anybody know if I can lease an IONIQ 5 and where? Well, the challenge is going to be finding a dealer that is willing to work with you at a reasonable price and a reasonable lease terms. I would recommend checking out YAA car dealer reviews. As a first step, search for the IONIQ 5. I know we've had several, at least 10 IONIQ 5 purchasers leave a review of the dealership they worked with on YAA Car Dealer Reviews. Now, even if you're interested in leasing, I think you should check that resource out, because you're going to see which dealers are most willing to offer a solid deal and not take advantage of the current market situation. There are a few dealers out there that are selling at MSRP, especially for the SE and SEL trims. It's way harder to find an MSRP limited trim, but I found one up at Hyundai 112 on Long Island. So definitely check that out. Find some dealers near you that seem to be pro-consumer.
and I think space has a point in there too.
I
Yeah,
agree.
it's
I agree with you, Space. What do you think, Justice?
yeah, they don't pass through the EV credit, so you're not getting any lease cash with the credit. The Hyundai just takes it, so
Yes.
it's not really worth. It's a much better purchase because you get the tax rebates and credits.
Yes, that's a really good point. So the federal EV tax credit is currently worth up to 7,500 if you owe that in your tax liability. But let's say you only owe 4 or 5,000 a year in federal taxes, you would still get that tax credit for that amount. Now, I had not thought about how Hyundai does not pass that on to the consumer. I purchased my Ioniq 5, so fortunately, I will be taking advantage of that federal EV tax credit. Now, there are two automakers that currently do not qualify for the federal EV tax credit simply because they were too successful and they sold so many EVs. Now, they're Tesla and General Motors. If we see any kind of revisions to the tax credit, maybe it'll come back. And honestly, Justice, I wanted to ask you this today, no matter what. Let's get into it now. How do you think Tesla's sales would respond and their market share would respond if they got the tax credit back? Would this be like, I know it's commonly said throughout the industry, but would this be game over for the quote unquote Tesla killers? Such an overused term. But if
Yeah.
Tesla got the tax credit back, would their market share go from 75% upwards?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got to figure. So they've been out of the federal tax credit for quite a while now, and with their latest increases in MSRP, they even hit out of California tax credits. So, and yet they're still 75% of the market. They're still taking up so much. So I think if you were able to get the price down to a comparable Ionic 5 or EV6 and you were buying a Tesla for that price, absolutely. It would be almost impossible for everybody else to catch up.
Yeah. Wow. I bet the other automakers, the legacy automakers, Ford with their multi-billion-dollar investments going into Ford Model E and GM with the Ultium platform, and who knows what Stellantis is doing. They've got to be a little bit nervous. They probably don't want revisions to the United States EV tax credit just because that would be troubling for them. I mean, I
No,
honestly went into the Ionic 5 because of the tax credit, ended up loving it way more than I thought I would, but if the Model Y still had the tax credit, that's probably the route I would have gone from the get-go. I would not have to negotiate with any dealers. I would not have to search around the country for someone willing to sell at MSRP. I mean, there's a lot of benefits to Tesla's direct-to-consumer model.
yeah, I mean, and for the legacy automakers in the US, they're the ones who put a few $1 billion into that Build Back Better program to make sure that the tax credit had to go to union built vehicles, knowing that you have Tesla and Hyundai and all those that are not union. So, yeah, I mean, they really want the tax credits to stay with them so they can get that leg up.
And here in the chat, Learning Fast had a great point. So when there were lots of rumors with the Build Back Better Act getting passed with a much higher federal EV tax credit, Tesla was at the same time incrementally raising their prices. You could argue that that was in anticipation of the EV tax credit returning, or you could say that it's because of higher material costs, or both. But that is true, Learning Fast. And if Tesla gets the tax credit back, maybe prices would go up. I don't know, but the Model Y already starts at roughly 63,000, and I don't know how much higher it can go and remain competitive, but it is a pretty amazing car. Should we talk Tesla versus Hyundai? I think we should.
All
So,
right. Yeah.
Justice, let's start here.
Yeah.
What would you say the number one thing you love about your car is? You have to pick one.
um, I love the power that it gives me.
Yeah.
I, I am, I'd say that's the one thing that I still appreciate over time. You have your fun little gadgets when you first get it, and everything's exciting, everything's fun. But the one, living here in California with all the traffic and weaving in and out on the freeway and stuff, the constant number one for me is I can get up and go. I can get to freeway speeds in seconds with traffic. I can pass and get through traffic. Um, and I always appreciate the power that I'm given. That's my number one on my vehicle.
For me, with the Ioniq 5, I really love how the interior feels like a living room. I mean, you can check out the picture behind me. You could literally recline the front seats in my wonderful Ioniq 5, and it's so spacious in there, not to mention its retro styling. But let's look at the numbers because I'm a really data-driven guy, and I know a lot of EV interested people out there also care about the numbers. What's the range that you get in your Model 3, and what trim do you have?
I go with the long range.
Okay.
So Yeah, that was range was most important to me. 0 to 60, okay, but
What
how
is the
often are
0
you
to
going to need?
60? Don't be
Uh,
shy.
I think I timed it at like 5 seconds, just over 5 seconds.
Oh,
So
okay.
it wasn't huge. I didn't, not that I pushed it a lot though,
So is
because
this long range rear wheel drive?
yeah,
Oh, that's the efficiency king of the Model 3, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. That
Ah.
was the most important because I go from those who know geography. I go from Sacramento to Los Angeles at least once a quarter. So for me, range really was the bigger deal. If I just stayed in Sacramento, I I wouldn't care as much about that. But because I do such long trips all the time, that was a big deal for me.
So, real world driving range on the highway. What kind of range would you get driving 70? I don't know. California speeds probably 75, 80, but let's say 75. What do you think you would get from 100% to 0% on the highway in your Model 3?
No,
Real world.
rough, yeah, rough guesstimate like 205 somewhere in there.
Oh, we're right in the same
And
ballpark then.
yeah, we probably are just in the because highways kill EVs,
Yeah, so
right?
I've
I
never
mean, that's
yeah, I'm guessing my own highway rated range or real world range based on the battery capacity of the Ionic 5, which is 72.5 kilowatt hour usable. And the fact that when I've been going about 75 on the highway, going down I-81 in Virginia, I was getting about 2.5 miles per kilowatt hour. So if you do the math, 2.5 times 72.5, I'm going to have to get back to you. Let me pull out the calculator, you guys. Let's see, 72.5 times 2.5. That'd be about 181 miles of range. So that's actually not as good as the Model 3, but it is a much larger vehicle.
it is. Yeah, it's the Ionic 5 is it's much spacier.
So space has a good point.
Spacious.
So high driving speed kills efficiency, and here in California, you have to move at 80. I know what you mean. I'm
Yep.
not one of those people that holds the traffic back by going 65 to maximize my efficiency. No, but in California, you guys have chargers everywhere, and in West Virginia, I don't. So honestly, whenever I've been on the highway, I have been driving like 5 miles per hour slower simply to improve my range. But if someday there are DC fast chargers all along the highways here, I wouldn't necessarily have to do that.
Or
Now,
800-volt architecture.
so whenever you purchased your car, what was the MSRP for a new Model 3 back whenever you purchased one?
I want to say 42.
And that was for the long range rear wheel drive?
Yeah.
Okay. So would you say that in 2022, the closest equivalent would be the standard range rear wheel drive 2022 Tesla Model 3 or the long range dual motor? Because there's no equivalent of because
No.
what's your rated range? 305 miles, 303 miles?
Yeah, 300 and something. Yeah.
Now, I know
Rated.
that the 2022 rear-wheel drive Model 3 gets about 275 miles on a charge, but if you're going for the long-range all-wheel drive, it's more like 350 EPA rated miles. So there's not really a like for like equivalent. But let's say that you purchased yours for roughly 42,000. Right now, the cheapest Tesla you can buy, or rather least expensive Tesla you can buy, is the rear wheel drive Model 3, which starts at about $47,000. Prices are going up.
Yeah.
And
A lot.
this is where I think Hyundai and Kia and other legacy automakers, they may have some wiggle room to try to just claw back a little bit of that EV market share. If they can sacrifice some of their profits simply for market share, try to hold their prices down despite raw material prices skyrocketing and supply shortage, demand far out exceeding supply. This is where the Hyundai IONIQ 5 might shine. What if they can hold the price where it is currently? It's a starting MSRP of about 44,000 while Tesla continues to increase their prices. Like, will people keep paying more for Teslas, or will other automakers gain the upper hand just simply because they're like $15,000 cheaper? What do you think?
I think the other automakers have a great shot right now between being cheaper, just straight off MSRP, and having the tax credits, both federal and then at a lot of the state levels. I think they have a great inroad here to be able to claw back a lot of that market share from Tesla. I think Tesla's at a distinct disadvantage raising prices. I also think their plans have shifted on their focus. I think Elon sort of alluded to that in the last update of the cyber rodeo.
Yes.
I think their focus is changing, and they may not be in the long haul game of selling cars for too long. And I think now is a great time for all these other manufacturers to strike while Tesla's still making cars for sale and they're a lot more expensive.
True, true. Now, Mark had a great question. Battery warranty comparison for the Tesla Model 3 and Hyundai IONIQ 5. Now, I know that Hyundai has a 10-year or 100,000-mile warranty for the battery electric powertrain. That's pretty good. Do you know what Tesla's warranty is?
I feel like I got the same thing. I feel like it was 10-year, 100,000 mile.
I believe it's currently 8 years or 100,000 mile, but I
Is
wonder
it?
if whenever you purchased it, it might have been a better warranty. I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
yeah, 8-year, 100,000 now. I feel like mine was 10. I have to look it up.
Tesla
It's
has
like
moved the goalposts a few times, so maybe it has changed. But right
yeah,
now, if you go out and buy one in 2022, it's 8 years or 100,000
they,
miles. So technically, Justice, I get a point there. I've got a better warranty. Now,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
depending how much you drive.
yeah.
I'm going to hit 100,000 before 8 years. So
And Tesla, I believe, has a 70% battery capacity inclusion in the warranty, where
yeah,
if your capacity drops below 70% of the original rated capacity, you could, in theory, get a free battery replacement. Is that how that works?
yeah, yeah. So if it's I think that is considered a defect of the battery. So
Hmm.
they will replace it. Now, I don't know what they'll replace it with as battery technology keeps getting better. Like if they have to replace it, you're really increasing the value of the vehicle, and for no extra cost doesn't seem very Tesla like.
What else should we compare between our cars? Ta-
Uh,
Tax credit. You don't get the tax credit anymore, but
no, I don't.
back whenever you purchased the Model 3, you might have. But in 2022, that was a big decision for me to decide. Well, I've always loved Tesla. Tesla is what got me interested in EVs like 5, 10 years ago. But the tax credit, that was such a big deal for me. So I wonder how many buyers out there who are opting for the Kia EV6, Ford's new electric vehicles, the Hyundai IONIQ 5, how many of those buyers would have just bought a Tesla online in 5 minutes if they could have gotten the tax credit? Because there are a lot of benefits to how Tesla sells vehicles. And it just comes down to how far are you willing to go to save some money.
Yeah, so when I bought mine, not going through a dealer was a really big selling point for me. Like
Ah,
to be able to just to go online, click buy. I went down to the showroom, test drove. I test drove everything. Um, of course, I wanted the Model X, but as there was no way I was going to be able to afford that.
me either.
Um, I went home and I went online, and they just click, click, click. It's very easy, very friendly. At that time, there wasn't all this backlog, so it was just a few weeks before I got it. Nice and easy. Now you're waiting a year for it to come through, so that's a little rougher too. You know, you just can't get a Model 3 in a couple weeks anymore.
Yeah. I mean, my wife and I, we would go test drive Teslas kind of just for fun. I mean, in the Dallas
Yeah,
area, there's Tesla service centers and the store locations where you can literally just go test drive one, drive around for 10 minutes and bring it back. And That was something that just really convinced me that EVs are the future. So Tesla's still 75% market share, but no matter what happens to their market share in the future, Tesla is still the face of electric vehicles, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
No, I know Ford and GM think they're the new faces of EVs, but I just don't think that's going to actually happen anytime soon.
Another great question from Freddie. So, what's the cost for using a Tesla supercharger? So, let's say, Justice, real world, if you were to go from like 10% state of charge to 90% state of charge because you're hitting the highway, how much would that cost in your local area at a supercharger?
Um, yeah, I don't use the superchargers much, but I think the most I put in, and on my way down to LA near the Grapevine, I think the most I've been charged was just over $17.
Oh, wow. So $17 to fill it up, and that would get you probably, I mean, considering starting and ending state of charge, that'd probably get you what, like 200 miles of driving range?
Yeah,
Yeah.
roughly.
Okay, and if you charge at home like I do, it's considerably, and like you do, it's considerably more affordable, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, much more.
It-
Well, in particular here in California, we also have all kinds of rebates. So I get 50% off my electric bill, had my home charger paid for, all that. So, there's lots of other programs out there that make it even cheaper to charge at home.
So I did some early morning errands driving around town this morning in my IONIQ 5, and I was curious, like, what's the cost, the fuel cost of driving around town about 20 miles? And I charge at home, so I did the math with my residential electricity rate of about 14 cents per kilowatt hour. Pretty cheap electricity. You're probably jealous of me, right, Justice? Being in California. But I came out with the cost of about 70 cents for my morning drive. Now, if I had done that in my former Nissan Altima or our Subaru Forester, it would have been like maybe $4 for the driving that I did this morning. So the cost savings, they trickle in slowly. You're not going to see the savings of driving an EV all on day one. It's going to take years, especially over the length of ownership, right? That's why financially it makes the most sense to switch to an EV if you plan to keep the vehicle for quite a while. Would you agree?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. You need it for a long time to counterbalance how much it costs up front, without a doubt. Uh, Owning it for 2 years or a year and a half just isn't going to make a lot of sense unless you're planning on continuously upgrading in the EV space.
Now, here's a great question from John. Are the batteries proprietary to the auto manufacturer? So I know Tesla sources their batteries from a few different battery manufacturers, correct?
Primarily Panasonic, however, that is changing now with Giga Texas, and they're making their own. But yeah,
Now, I believe the IONIQ 5 gets batteries from SK Innovation, but and CATL, which is one of the larger battery manufacturers out of China, growing rapidly in market share among the battery industry. So I wouldn't say they're proprietary, but when Tesla's got that 4680 cell, I think that
yeah,
would be proprietary, right? Like they're not going to be
yeah.
sharing that with the world.
No, that's the whole point of them going to make their own is they want that 4680, and that's gonna, that's a pretty big game changer for them. And manufacturing it themselves, they think they can get it down to uh, a very reasonable cost and be able to lower the price of their vehicles. We'll see if that actually happens or not. Uh, Elon has had said a lot of things about the prices of Teslas that doesn't seem to always pan out.
Now, Igor had a great comment. So he said, you better live in a house or have an EV charger near you if you're going electric. So 17% of Americans live in an apartment or condo. Charging access in multifamily housing is definitely going to be central to the success of EVs in the long run. Pretty crazy, right? Like, I feel fortunate to have the ability to charge in my garage, but a big chunk of America can't do that. Is that something you've seen in California where apartments, condos, different things like that are installing chargers that residents can use?
Yeah, so there's a bill passing through California right now. We already require solar paneling on all new construction homes. And there's a new bill requiring chargers to be put in at multifamily housings right now.
Wow.
I will tell you, I live in multifamily housing and I was able to install a charger here
Wow,
um,
that's
for,
awesome.
for my space. And again, that was paid for from my local utility company to get that done. We also have city ordinance in Sacramento that is going forward. Their aim is to put chargers at 30% of all public parking spaces by the end of 2030.
That is amazing. Now, we're almost to Tesla insurance, and then we'll call it a day because I know we're going a bit over our time. But do you happen to know what the drag coefficient of the Model 3 is?
Oh, I don't. I do not. It was,
So while you look it up, I'll share with the world, with the YouTube world, what the IONIQ 5's drag coefficient is. It's not too great. My car looks really cool. It's a head turner, but it's not super aerodynamic. I have a drag coefficient of about 0.29. So that's not that great. And that definitely affects the range because I've got a pretty big battery, 72.5 kilowatt hour battery. That's big. But when you combine that with a drag coefficient of 0.29, that's why I only get 180 miles if I'm going 75 miles per hour on the highway. But I forgot to mention to everyone that I do get about 300 miles of range around town. So I'm happy with that. What did you find, Justice?
yep, it's 0.23 for the Model 3 and Y.
Wow. That's amazing for the Model Y, such a larger vehicle, and it's got such
Yeah,
great aerodynamics.
I'm not sure how they're both the same because they're dramatically different vehicles.
Wow.
So
We'll have to do some investigative journalism on that.
yeah, yeah, I've ever never actually looked up the drag coefficient for them. So now I'm curious.
Yes. Thank you, Christopher, for that wonderful comment. I love the EV6. It definitely is kind of the polar opposite in terms of styling inspiration versus the Ioniq 5, but that's great because Hyundai, Kia have kind of catered to people who like retro pixelated cars like the Ioniq 5 and spaceship looking cars like the EV6. Now, Justice, let's finish up the show talking about Tesla insurance. Could you maybe start us out by just explaining what Tesla is offering and how this is different from other insurance products, as well as maybe a little bit about your experience and how you think it's going to go in the future?
Yeah, so it's it's different from other products in that, of course, your manufacturer is the one who's selling it. So what they do, which is different, is they can monitor your driving at all times. So they're constantly getting that, and that affects your rate. Good driving habits, and issues of that really lower your rate. And it can be flexible over time. You know, when your policy renews, they're going to look at your driving habits, and which may be good or bad for you depending on how you drive.
Sounds
But they
stressful.
they reward good driving. So, you know, I'm old enough now that I got some savings off of that.
Oh,
You
that's
know,
good.
20 years ago, I probably would have had to pay a much higher rate just for my driving alone. Uh, but but they're taking all that data, they're compiling it and using it um, for the best models they can to reduce the price as much as possible. Um, you know, some issues maybe with claims. Based on my experience, the claims process is difficult.
Would you say those
Uh,
are growing pains for a new insurance provider, or a lack of
maybe
having enough employees to fix the cars, or or anything like that?
Well, so it wasn't the fixing for me that was the problem. It was the claim process itself. So in my case, the vehicle, the front end was damaged and it bent the frame, and they would not, for the longest time, total out the car. They just wanted
Justice
to,
hit a deer, everyone.
yeah, so, yeah. If you don't know, I hit a deer. It dented the front of the vehicle, bent the frame, and I went through a multi-week process with them to get them to total out the vehicle. Um, they wanted to fix it, but if you know about how Teslas are made, you know that front piece is all one piece. So when you dent that, it's not like you can just replace a bumper kind of thing. It's the whole front half of the vehicle. This frame is damaged. So I don't know if that was a growing pains of a new vehicle, or if that was just a typical insurance company trying not to pay out as much as they had. I really don't know. I finally did get them to total it and to admit that it wasn't a resellable vehicle. The whole reason I got the Model 3, to explain real fast, in the first place was so I could trade it in when my Cybertruck came in, which I ordered on the first day it was available to order. Tesla's sort of notorious about super lowballing you on your trade. You don't really want to trade in your vehicle to Tesla if it's not a Tesla. It doesn't work out very well. So I got the Model 3, as you know, Cybertruck is still a myth that may eventually be made one day. So in the meantime, I figured if I had a Tesla to trade in, that would be fantastic. I could get a good deal on it. So having such a diminished value as a bent frame, I knew there was no trade-in value to that. So it was a fight with the insurance to get them to total it out. That was what was really my main concern there, was I needed almost a pristine vehicle to trade in when the Cybertruck comes out.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that it eventually worked out for you, right? And
Yeah.
hopefully Tesla Insurance sees a lot of success as they adapt to those growing pains. And I mean, I think it's going to be more and more popular because more and more people are buying Teslas. Their market share continues to go up and not down, which is not what we thought we'd see by 2022. But I don't think Tesla Insurance is going anywhere, that's for sure. Let's jump to the comments one more time before we end today's show. So Christopher says he sees no increase in his insurance on the Kia EV6 electric vehicle. Christopher, I haven't had any increase purchasing an IONIQ 5. I pay about $50 a month for decent coverage for my IONIQ 5. And I know some Tesla owners pay like $150 a month for their Teslas. But once again, a lot of this is factoring in the value of the vehicle, how much it would cost to replace it. And if you're driving around a Model S, then of course it's going to cost more, right? So Sean says, how do they charge road tax on EVs? Some states, such as West Virginia, where I live, they have you pay an extra fee at registration, at annual registration, to accommodate for the missed gas taxes that I don't pay. So I actually have to pay $200 extra every single year to fix all those potholes around town. So some states have that going on, other states don't. Now,
Yeah,
I
on
think
that, California is introducing the per mile tax. That's going through the Senate right now. So that'll offset. So you'll be charged per mile you drive, to offset for the fact that not only EVs, but hybrids have taken a big chunk out of the state's gas tax revenue.
Wow. And Mark says that solar cells are being tested on the roof or hood of electric vehicles. I think this will become quite commonplace a whole decade from now. It's definitely going to take a while, but a lot of auto manufacturers have this in development, so that's a bit exciting. Even it's basically a constant trickle charge when it's sunny outside, because you're not going to be getting a lot of electricity from a solar panel on the roof, maybe 10 miles per day if you're lucky. It might even be less than that. But yeah, we'll definitely be talking more about these types of innovations. Mark, thank you for the comment. And before we go, I just want to say, everyone, please send us your questions either to my email, justin@joinyaa.com, or reach out to Justice, which I believe is justice@joinyaa.com. What we'd rather you do, of course, is head over to our community forum, joinyaa.com/community, where you can chat with other auto nerds, auto advocates. You can chat with people who don't know anything about cars. You can chat with car experts. You can talk about how to buy a car, the EV lifestyle, literally anything under the sun. So please join us over at the YAA community. There's always something to learn and explore over there. And we definitely look forward to Friday's episode. Justice, it has been wonderful. And I can already say we're definitely going to have you back as a guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciated being here. It was fun.
Yeah, and IONIQ 5 wins, in my opinion. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. You have the right to be wrong. This is
Yeah,
America.
yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, we'll send out a survey on the YouTube channel once we have a bit more subscribers. But have a great afternoon or great morning, Justice, over there on the West Coast. And thank you, everyone. We'll see you Friday.
Bye, everybody.